Hello and welcome to the Pinellas County Ready, Set, Protect Hurricane Preparedness webinar. My name is Jess McCracken. I'm the Whole Community Program Specialist for Pinellas County Emergency Management. Today, we encourage your participation via the Q&A feature located at the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to submit your questions anytime throughout the program, and we'll be sure to either answer them throughout or we have saved time at the end of the program for a Q&A session. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Today we have with us Joe Borys with Pinellas County Emergency Management. He is the Response and Recovery Manager and Operations Chief in the Emergency Operations Center during activations. We have Dave Connor with Pinellas County Communications, who is the Marketing and Public Information Manager, and Chief Trip Bars, who is the Fire Chief for Treasure Island Fire Rescue. Thank you all for joining us today. We begin to prepare for the 2023 hurricane season coming right off the heels of Hurricane Ian. Last hurricane season, Hurricane Ian became the third costliest weather disaster on record in the U.S. and the deadliest to strike the state of Florida since 1935. Many would say that Pinellas County was extremely fortunate to be spared the hardest hit from the storm. We saw with Hurricane Ian that time is the one resource you cannot get more of. Joe, what do we want our Pinellas County residents to know as they prepare for the 2023 storm season?
Thank you, Jess. And thank you to everyone listening in on this webinar today. Joe Borys, Response and Recovery Manager. When it comes to hurricane preparedness, we always ask three things. Know your risks, make a plan, and stay informed. This year, we're adding Ready, Set, Protect to give our residents a better sense of the limited time available to prepare and get set to protect as a hurricane threat approaches Pinellas County. Knowing and understanding your home or business risks from a hurricane is important to preparedness. One fallacy we'd like residents to understand is that storm hazards are only inside the cone. Storm hazards are only inside the cone. That is not true. The cone is only to inform on a potential track of the eye of the storm. Storm impacts fall outside the cone, especially as the track certainty improves, the cone is actually shrinking as it gets closer to us. As you can see in the image right there to the left, those circle wind fields are well outside the cone because, again, the cone is only about the center of the storm. So let's step through the risks of a hurricane approaching us. Storm surge is the most deadliest part of a hurricane as it's approaching. And later on, I'll touch on how it impacts our evacuation orders as well, too. Storm surge is the most life-threatening. Our evacuation zones are set to storm surge. As an example, for Hurricane Ian, there were 149 Hurricane Ian-related deaths. 57 of those were from drowning alone. So understanding your storm surge for your home and your evacuation zone is very important for understanding that risk. Next. Wind is also associated with a hurricane. But there are two different things. The storm surge is part of the wind field for sure. The bigger the storm, the more the storm surge. But the wind field can carry way far inland and be devastating to your home or manufactured home as well too. So we need to be prepared for that as well. Understanding that we need to protect our home's envelope from the wind. And if we are inside a home and the winds are getting crazy, being able to protect that just like if you would for a tornado. So understanding your wind risk for your home by its age and its protective measures that you have available or mitigation is very important as well too. Another part of a hurricane, especially from some of the recent ones and the more slow moving ones, is a flood danger from just rainwater itself from the storm. As you know, in Pinellas County, as we get high tides and higher tides, especially with storm surge, the storm drains fill up with that water, and then the rainwater has nowhere to go. So we could see real flooding risks from a storm, especially a slow moving storm or a very wet storm as it comes over us. So that is a hazard as well too. So maybe you haven't had rain flooding in your neighborhood before, but that is a real possibility with the approaching storm as well too. And we try to communicate those risks as they're approaching. So those are the hazards to be prepared for. And we'll talk more as we move along the presentation.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe. So one thing Joe mentioned was staying informed and having multiple ways to get information. And having multiple ways to get information and communicate are critical to staying safe during a storm. Dave, let's talk about some methods of communication available to Pinellas County residents and what residents can expect in terms of communication from Pinellas County in preparation for a storm.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jess. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Dave Connor. During a storm activation, my team and I will work basically around the clock at the Emergency Operations Center in Largo to get timely and relevant and accurate information out to everyone in Pinellas County, both residents and visitors. And I want to share a couple resources with you today that we can use both before, during, and after a storm to stay safe and help recover. So let's start with before a storm. At any time of year, you can go to the Pinellas County Emergency Management website. And I will share these links in the chat after we're done talking, so you don't have to try to take notes of what you're seeing on screen. And on that website, you can see everything from, if you're doing renovations on your house, what are some protective measures you might want to take to make your roof stronger, for example, to making your hurricane plan, to where you might be able to, or what you should consider for your pet. So that's if you want to go to the website. If you want to get a text message or a phone call whenever something is threatening Pinellas County, whenever a hurricane is threatening Pinellas County, the best thing that you can do is sign up for Alert Pinellas. Alert Pinellas is basically a direct notification service that we will send out messages on if there's a tornado warning in a specific area, if there's a hurricane warning, if there's something else that could be a risk to residents of Pinellas County. You can sign up, you can take your pick, whether you want it to go to your phone or go to your email address. You can do both if you want. And that will get you up to the date, up to the minute, breaking news updates of those risks. You can also download, if you want an app, you can download the Ready Pinellas app, which gets those updates and also has a lot of very convenient tools for making plans for you and your family and your pets to have a preparedness plan. And that's available whether you have an iPhone or an Android phone. One good way to stay informed during a hurricane, and honestly to follow a lot of the very diverse work that Pinellas County does throughout the year, is on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Nextdoor, whatever platform you use, we are there. And it's the same on all of those platforms. You can just search for Pinellas Gov and you will find our channel. We post everything there that we're also putting on the internet. If you prefer something in print, your best bet is to pick up a copy of the 2023 Hurricane Preparedness Guide. It's available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. It's available at all Pinellas County offices, also at the offices of the Florida Department of Health in Pinellas County, and also at your local library. And it's also available at some municipal offices. So that would be the city that you live in. If you live in St. Pete or Clearwater or Gulfport, there's usually copies available there. And that's a great resource. It takes all the stuff we're talking about today and goes into a little more depth about all the topics and shares some additional resources. So if you like a print product, that's a good fit. If there's one thing that you walk away from this conversation with, there's one thing that you do today, you can do this right now. It's important that you know your evacuation zone. Evacuation zones, as Joe may have mentioned, are set based on the risk of storm surge to your life. If you're in a zone A and there's a storm surge coming and we order an evacuation for zone A, listening to that evacuation and getting out of an evacuation zone could save your life. And you can look up your evacuation zone right now If you're on this webinar, you're clearly comfortable using computers, accessing the internet, and you can go to KYZ, that stands for Know Your Zone, kyz.pinellas.gov. You just type in your address, your zone pops up. That also is helpful during a hurricane or when a hurricane is approaching, because we will update that as evacuations are ordered. And you can see exactly which areas are being told to evacuate and which residents need to take action to protect themselves and their family and their pets. The last thing I'll share, you may know about See-Click-Fix. See-Click-Fix is a infrastructure damage or issue reporting tool. All the big cities around here use it: Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater. Pinellas County uses it as well. Any time of year, if you notice a broken stoplight or a clogged drain, you can go on this app or to the website and you can report it, and it'll get routed to the appropriate city based on the address you put in, or the county, and the staff from that city or the county will take action and fix it. We really look at that after a storm, because just as a storm can damage your house, it might knock down a stoplight, it might damage a bus station, it might cause any of these other issues. So that's a great resource to get things to the people who can take advantage of them. And the last thing I'll share, and again, this is something you're probably doing, we do work very closely with the local media throughout the year, but specifically when we're coming into a storm event, we give them daily updates. We give them the latest information. We actually have a special room at our emergency operations center that journalists, reporters from the newspapers, from the TV, sometimes from different radio stations, that they will come to the emergency operations center, and it's right next to the room where all of my staff is. So they are getting up to the moment updates as well. So you can always turn to your local TV or radio station to get accurate updates. One thing that is only activated when a specific hurricane is threatening Pinellas County is called the County Information Center. The County Information Center is staffed by Pinellas County employees, and it is both a phone bank, so you can call. The number there is on the screen, but it only works when a hurricane threatens Pinellas County. If you were to call it now, it would just take you to our emergency management department. And you can also use live chat. That is a real person on the other end of the chat. That is not some robot or some artificial intelligence. And you can call in or chat in, and they can also provide some information. Now, I will warn you that there are only so many employees that end up able to staff these events. So there may be wait times, especially if there's a very big storm coming in. And that's why all those other resources that I shared and that I will put in the chat, that's why all those other resources are a really good first bet, because those will be updated, breaking news at the minute, just as quickly as the folks in the County Information Center will get the information in front of them. So I encourage you to help yourself with the resources that we'll share. I really encourage you to help your neighbors, because right now there are 49 of you on this call. There are several other webinars that Emergency Management has hosted, but there are more than 950,000 people in Pinellas County. And so I applaud all of you taking the initiative to seek out this information, to find these resources. And now I ask for your help in sharing these resources, these links, these tools with your neighbors, with your family, with your church group, with the folks at the barbershop. Whoever is an appropriate person for you to talk to about this sort of thing, give them the information too. You'll be helping them, and you'll be keeping our entire community safer. If you have any questions about anything I've shared, you can put it in the question and answer. I will be here for the entire presentation, and I can try to stick around and answer any questions that come up. Thank you so much, and I hope we don't need any of this information this year or next year.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. And as Dave mentioned,
Gracias, Dave.
I know that there is a lot of information
Sé que hay
being
mucha
shared.
información que estamos compartiendo con ustedes.
We will share that in the chat, and we will also send a
Vamos
full
a
resource
compartir en
guide
el chat
following the webinar with a link to the webinar recording.
y vamos a encontrar la grabación
Now, we always talk
de
about the
este
importance of
webinar.
making a plan, and we hear the importance of making a plan for hurricane season. Joe, who should we be planning for, and what should Pinellas County residents include in their plan?
Oh, great question, Jess. We should be planning for our home, our family, and our pets. And we should be planning for 7 days of time alone or at home while we're waiting for the resources to muster and be able to get out in the community and help. Protecting your home's envelope is very important. Covering your windows, bracing your garage door, moving your vehicles, if possible, up on your yard to higher ground. But protecting your envelope from the wind is very important. Having supplies for all your family member unique needs, babies, extra diapers, the medicines you may need, tweens, you need to have some snacks for your kids and maybe some non-electronic games. We have some great resources for could be in your emergency kit. For sure, we need you to look at that and prepare that. Some basic items, sanitation wipes, water, at least 1 gallon of water per person per day, flashlight or lantern, because we do expect power outages when we do receive hurricane winds, insect repellent, extra gas cans filled with gas. One thing I'll say about, I'll touch on it maybe a little later as well too, is during hurricane season, keeping your car at least half filled with gas, so that if you needed to evacuate, you have that gas at least. And if you needed to fill up, you wouldn't have to fill up your entire tank if there were. It's not that we don't have a lot of gas supply, it just could be limited resupply that happens as everybody's trying to move about during an evacuation. Your important documents, having those with you as well too. I'm taking them with you in case there's damage to your home and damage to your file cabinets, wherever you keep those. You want to have your important documents with you, your insurance paperwork, your contact phone numbers, things like that. So post-impact, you have those available. I mentioned supplies for babies, sterilized water, formula too, if needed. And basic supplies for your pets as well too. So they need water as well, and then you need dog food. You need a collar and leash for them too. If they're with you and you have to go somewhere else, and maybe you have to step out of your vehicle or a hotel or wherever you're sheltering at, so that you can walk them and relieve them. So keeping that in mind. And then once you've done all that for yourself and you're prepared, seek out your extended family members, your neighbors, and ask if they need any help to be ready as well too. It takes a whole community to prepare for a hurricane, so seek them out and see if they need some assistance as well too. And why are we doing all this planning and preparing? It's to get ready for the set phase. So, the ready phase we talked about is, we're at risk. We know what that risk is. We're preparing for that risk. We see a storm coming, we're getting ready for that. And then the set phase is, we understand that a hurricane is approaching. As I mentioned, again, the storm surge is the most deadliest part. So we're looking at the entire size of the storm, the size of the storm surge threat that's approaching us, how deep the water could get when it comes over us. And that's how we set our evacuation zones. As you can see, 12 to 15 feet of storm surge reaches very far inland, past the barrier islands, up into Pinellas County, and you'll see that there's water there. And 2 foot of water can move a vehicle, right? 2 foot of water is above your electrical outlets. You don't want to be there. We want you to evacuate, and we'll get you out at the time of the greatest risk, so that evacuation end time, and then you should be at your safe place, and then we'll try to help you return as quickly as possible once we've made the streets safe and protected. And the chief is going to talk about some of that in a little bit. So once we realize what the threat is, we make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and they discuss it with us, and they call an evacuation order. So, we think the storm surge is going to be so much, the wind fields are going to be so high, We make a recommendation, and then they'll order an evacuation order. And that is for everybody, pets, animals, employees, staff that are in that evacuation area. So if we order a C evacuation, that's everybody that's in the A, B, and C zones, whether you're in the city, county, no matter where, every living being must leave that area for life safety. And then we also order at all times manufactured mobile homes, because the wind fields are dangerous for them in most every condition of a hurricane as well too. Next. And so, as I mentioned, we want you to secure your home as you're either staying, sheltering in place, or if you're evacuating, you want to protect the envelope of your home, shutter your windows, bring flying debris inside, barbecue grills, chairs, things like that. Reinforce your garage doors, pick up loose items around your yard. If you have a pool, there are some things you can put in the pool so that they would be, stay underwater and be safe. I mentioned filling your gas tank. I really like the idea of keeping your gas tank half filled throughout the hurricane and season. And this way you don't have to fill it up all at once if you did need to evacuate, but being prepared for that. And don't forget your boat as well too. If you're going to pull your boat out of the water, that takes time. Again, the ready, set, protect is about the diminishing amount of time that's available to you. So by the time we get to the set that the hazard is upon us, you need to be pulling your boat out and taking it with you, or securing it if need be. Do not ride out the storm in your boat. Unfortunately, some did that down south, and I think they paid for that. And don't do that. Take your boat out, secure your boat. It's something that can be replaced. Your life cannot. Next. And then for your evacuation options, so if you should have made a plan, right? And you're going to implement your evacuation options and your plan for that. If you're staying at home, you're preparing your envelope as we discussed. And then consider being a host home. A lot of folks won't ask for assistance, but if you have space for people, especially folks with pets who might not feel welcome, reach out to them and ask if they would like to come to your home if you're outside of the evacuation zone and you're prepared to help out. That's a really great thing to do. Next. And if you're going out of town, again, make sure you fill your gas tank as early as possible. Have a plan for where you're going. Roads could be congested. It may take you a little time to get there, so be prepared for that while you're traveling. Bring your kits with you. Bring your pets with you. Make room for them in your vehicle or vehicles, and stay. Take Irma, you had to go far if you're going out of Florida, because that went up the spine of the state, right? So plan your route carefully and make sure that you get to a safe place by the anticipated time that the storm may get to where you are evacuating to, and hopefully you're outside of that evacuation area for wherever the storm's track is anticipated or forecast to travel. Hotel, motels, they fill up quickly. If you try to make a reservation, we've heard, that many do successfully get into hotels they've made reservations for, but sometimes, people are pestering them. They're showing up there and asking for room. So call ahead, confirm your plans, maybe have a backup plan as well too. Things will be congested there as well too. So bring any unique foods and items that you may need there as well too. Not every hotel has restaurant services, so be prepared for that as well too. Visitflorida.com and even our Visit St. Pete Clearwater does have some information on hotels are available. But I can tell you, if you're trying to get to a hotel in Pinellas, a majority of them are along the Barrier Islands, and most of them will be ordered to evacuate, right? So you may have to go inland. So again, the traffic getting there and what type of amenities are there that you need to be prepared for as well. And then, of course, if you can't get out or your transportation disadvantage, we do open up shelters. We ask that those are a last option for you. They're a lifeboat, not a cruise ship. But we do open general population shelters for those who have vehicles and can travel there or get there. The PSTA buses also provide some free transportation. We open in special needs shelters. We open pet-friendly shelters as well too, where you can bring your cat or dog to that shelter, and you'll be responsible taking and walking them and feeding them. We have a place for them as well too, and we have options for folks with special needs to bring their pets, and we'll care for your pets as well too. You know, the PSTA buses, the rides to shelters, once we activate, are free to get around on the buses, and they will go, even if it's not on their route, they will go by the closest shelter on that route to bring folks who are evacuating there as well too. So we appreciate their partnership and help with our citizens. The special needs shelters, if you do need transportation assistance, we ask that you register for our special needs program now. And then we get you on our program, and we'll call and make sure of your needs, and then make plans to pick you up and your pet if necessary and take you to a shelter. If it is last minute, and we ask that it not be, that's what that county information center that Dave spoke of is available. Once we activate, we turn that on, you can call there, and we will try to make arrangements up until it's still safe to do so, to come and get you. You know, and some of the considerations that you bring with you is, you know, you come with a caregiver, your durable medical equipment if needed, any mobility devices, and all your medications as well too. And then we have 3 different shelters that could care for our special needs residents. And again, I hate to say this often, but we seem to have to, is don't forget your pets. Do not leave your pets behind. Take them with you, no matter what type of pet it is. Ferrets or snakes or whatever you got, take them with you. Care for them. Don't forget their food and their water as needed as well too. Is there one more slide?
I think we will stop there after talking about our pets. And so that's walked us through getting ready and getting set. And now we'll talk about protect. So when the impacts are here. So when time is run out, meaning you should be in your safe place to ride out the storm. That's buses have stopped running once winds reach a certain mile per hour. Transportation to public shelters has stopped. The winds will continue to gain strength, and once they reach a certain mile per hour, 40 to 50 miles an hour, conditions will not be safe for anyone to be outside, which means our fire and emergency medical services will not be able to respond to emergencies. So it's very important that you are at your safe place to shelter in place for the storm. Chief, let's talk about sheltering in place and what people should be doing during the storm.
Right, and thank you. That's very good points you made there. We don't want to see folks waiting till right before the storm is upon us to make that evacuation decision. I know it is tempting to wait. Let's see if it jogs left or right and is not so bad. But if you're in an evacuation zone and you're ordered to evacuate, truly your life depends on it. We saw this down in Southwest Florida with Ian. They didn't have the luxury of time because the storm jogged at the last minute, and some were not able, especially we went and saw Sanibel Island a couple of weeks ago. They're still recovering and will be for a long time. So it's very important to heed the evacuation warnings. We say run from the water and hide from the wind. If you've got a sturdy home, and as Joe alluded to earlier, stay in your home if it's outside of a flood zone. Find a safe room in the interior of your home with no windows. That will protect you from wind, but it cannot protect you from water. So you definitely need to be in a place when the storm hits that is not going to flood. And waiting to the last minute is only going to cause you the potential of having to ride the storm out in your vehicle in a traffic jam on a roadway, which is not where we want you or where you want to be. So some things you may see, you may get floodwater rising into your home. And as Joe mentioned earlier, outlets are at about 2 feet. Once the outlets get covered, you have an issue with electrical safety. So go ahead and flip the breaker as the winds are getting high. You'll probably lose power anyway, but flip the main breaker, turn that off so that if you do get a water inundation, the risk of electrocution is less. You can expect strong winds, tornadoes, certainly lightning as those bands move through before and during the storm. You will likely lose power, as we alluded to earlier. If you're a special needs resident, please register with the county and let us come pick you up and take you to a shelter where you will have a guaranteed power source for your oxygen generator, your respirator, whatever it is you're medically dependent upon for power. Please consider that. You'll probably lose phone, cable, and cell service, which means unless you've got a battery-powered or hand-crank emergency radio, you will not be getting up-to-date information during the storm. So take care of that ahead of time and get one of those devices so you can be connected during the storm and immediately after. As I mentioned, a central room away from windows is important, especially if we get winds that'll shatter glass or tornadoes coming through. And then wait for the storm to pass until you try to do any emergency repairs or debris removal. Don't be tempted to go out if the eye comes overhead when it gets beautiful. We've got just as much wind coming, but from another direction. So hold off on those. I know you're curious that you see what's been done and how your property fared, but hold off until the storm is well past and go outside cautiously. We'll talk about that more in a minute. One thing we did see in Hurricane Ian down south, some of our folks went down there as part of a strike team to assist immediately after the storm. Electric vehicles can be, and if you have lithium batteries as part of a solar system in your home, and then electric vehicles, if their batteries are compromised and water gets into that case, you can expect them to spontaneously combust at some point. And that's a runaway fire as each cell of the battery progresses to the next one. So that can be dangerous if your car does get, is an electric vehicle or a hybrid and does get inundated with water. Push, pull, or drag it out of your house and put it at the end of the driveway to prevent. We'd rather see a car fire in the driveway than a house fire caused by a car in the garage. One last thing, and we can switch. I think the next slide shows it. We talk about generator safety during the storm and probably more likely after the storm. Three things to remember about a generator. They are either propane, gasoline, or diesel fed, so they're going to generate carbon monoxide, which is an odorless, colorless, deadly gas. You can't see it, smell it, or taste it. And as the generator runs, if it is indoors or the exhaust is facing a window or a door or up underneath the eave of a home, those gases can build up and you can have deadly concentrations, which you essentially get groggy and fall asleep and it can kill you. So please keep that in mind. There's a fine line between securing your generator from theft and having it in a place where it'll kill you. So keep those options in mind. Fuel storage is important. Don't put fuel I've seen people put fuel in a gallon milk jug because they really wanted extra fuel for the generator. Only approved containers for fuel, and store those appropriately and outside of your home. And then finally, the backfeeding. When you have a home generator, it's installed by an electrician and they use a transfer switch, which automatically shunts your home from the rest of the electrical grid, protects power workers and anyone else from being fed power from your house. When they think their house is safe, you could be generating power from your house outside to the electrical grid. If you have a home generator, just have a portable generator and you plug it into an outlet in your home, it may power some of your circuits, but it will also be transferring power outside of your home. So keep that in mind. Definitely have an electrician install a transfer switch for you.
Great. Thanks so much, Chief. A lot of great information. And again, we'll be sending out a full resource guide with links to all of these resources, as well as a link to the video recording if you want to share that or watch it to get the information again. We have a lot of great questions coming in, and we'll go ahead and save them for the end so we can make sure to get through the information. Dave, any communication considerations for during the storm?
You know, we will continue working through the storm. We're at the Emergency Operations Center. We do have backup power, but one of the biggest limitations is that power can go out, cell phones can go out, internet services can go out. It can become a lot more complicated to hear whatever messages or to make sure our messages reach people's ears out in the community. A couple things you can do: you can buy a weather radio. A NOAA weather radio typically, and those can come with batteries, or they can come as a hand cranked option, and that can give accurate information throughout the storm. And then immediately after the storm, we will do everything we can to get relevant, timely, accurate information to affected communities as quickly as possible, whether that's all the traditional things we do of working with the media, posting on the internet, posting on social media, staffing our county information center, or if it's more unconventional, we may send more folks out into the community or figure out other ways to get you the information you need. Again, after the storm, what the county is doing, big picture, is figuring out what is damaged, where is there damage, where are people at risk, that we can send emergency crews to assist them as soon as it is safe to do so. And then what are the emerging needs? Are there a lot of people without homes? Are there a lot of people who might need feeding or an area to stay cool if it's the hotter months of summer? So we will be doing all of that after the storm.
Great. Thanks so much, Dave. And that actually leads to the next question I was going to ask. Chief, what should residents expect after the storm, and what are some safety considerations when they are returning home if they evacuated?
Right. Great question. Remain sheltered in place, and please resist the urge to drive around and check out the damage. There will be some re-entry points that are controlled by the sheriff and local law enforcement. But what we really ask is that citizens allow the first responders to get out, because we're going to be sheltered too, either in the fire stations or in the case of the Barrier Island fire departments like us, we're evacuating to an off-island EOC as well. So what we need to do is check our equipment, get back out on the roads. We follow our public works folks who will do what's called first push. That means debris on the major roadways just gets pushed to the side to allow the first responders access to the impacted areas. And that would be police, fire, EMS, or public works responders as well. We have some very specific timeframes that we need to act in. As soon as we get daylight and winds drop below a set level where it's safe for our folks to be out on the road, we're going to perform a search and rescue and a damage assessment of the impacted area. That's one of our vehicles and personnel driving street by street, looking for people who did not or were not able to evacuate. We're making rescues and bringing those folks to a safe place. And we're assisting the county in compiling the information and the data that's required to know just how much and how badly we were impacted. We're going to have to request resources from the state and potentially the federal government, definitely from out of the area. So we need to get a good handle on that. And if we have citizens running around and trying to run errands or check on their property immediately post-storm, it just hampers all those activities. Everybody wants power back before they can come back home. We need to let Duke and Tico and those folks do their jobs. One of the complaints that we see in a lot of the after action reports is the electric companies the personnel have to keep coming down off the wire out of their bucket trucks to discuss things with citizens that could have been answered on our Citizens Information Center line. So let those folks work. It's dangerous to be around them. They may be dropping lines, working around oil-filled transformers. So you don't want to be around them anyway. Bridges will need to be inspected by Department of Transportation. FDOT will get out and certify bridges before we can allow vehicle traffic over them. That's one of our immediate priorities. And then I like to tell our folks here in Treasure Island, and I guess I'll tell everyone, there'll be plenty of water, sewage, and electricity after the storm. They're just not going to be where you're used to seeing them. They're going to be in the streets. I make light of it, but it's true. Sewage requires gravity to feed to the treatment stations. And where gravity is not our friend, we have what's called a lift station. And the public works folks will tell you those lift stations will bring the sewage from about 20 feet down up to the surface and then let it continue to flow with gravity, but they require power. So when we lose power, our public works responders need to get out there with portable generators and pump down those lift stations. If they're not able to do that because of debris or other issues, they can overflow, and you might be wading through water that has flesh-eating bacteria or sewage in it. So another good reason to stay sheltered while we do our initial work for 24 to 48 hours. The power lines that are down and entangled in downed trees could be live. We don't know. We're very careful with them. We avoid them until the power company can verify. So definitely a citizen danger as well. So just some things to keep in mind. We're doing as much work as fast as we can. We've got all hands on deck. Please be assured there's not a firefighter, EMT, or police officer or deputy that's not on duty during an impact. We may be rotating our crews out so we can sustain operations, but we've got everyone out there working to get us to a safe place where we can get you back to your home. And then the expectation just needs to be that if we take a major hit, it's not going to be days or weeks. It's going to be months and months before we are back to what we think of currently as normal. But we will make it safe and get you back to your home as soon as possible.
Thanks so much, Chief. I think it's really important that the residents understand what we're doing as a county and with all of our partners after the storm, to take that into consideration with some of their actions after the fact. So thank you so much for that.
Yep.
Joe, I wanted to touch on something that Chief mentioned about damage assessment. What if citizens have damage? Is there a way that they can report this, and how do they access this information?
Right. So we do train with our county folks and departments and the cities as well too to do damage assessment. But citizens, residents who want to report damages, if they have an internet or cellular connection, can go to our damage assessment tool or through Ready Pinellas and click on damage assessment as well too, and report damages to your home, condo, apartment, or manufactured home. Pools and docks, FEMA doesn't look for that as damages, but they want to know where the living space has been damaged so they can do some assessments and prepare. When we send those reports up there, they'll analyze that and determine the disaster declaration that we should receive. It could be an emergency declaration, which is a little lesser than a major disaster declaration. A major disaster declaration turns on what I call the alphabet soup of support from the state and federal government, much like they saw down south as well too. So that's what we're looking for. And if your home is flooded, we would like you to take a picture of how high that water got into your home as well too. There are some determinations about how much damage that is based on how high that water got into your home. So please, if you could take pictures of that, that'd be great, and use our online tool when you have access to submit that to us. And we post that on the front of our webpage. And again, it's available through Ready Pinellas mobile app as well too.
Great. Thank you, Joe. So I'm going to go ahead and get to some of the questions. This PowerPoint will be sent out along with the resource guide that we have discussed earlier. So you'll have access to that. And again, a recording of this webinar. And anyone on the panel, feel free to jump in and answer. We had a question that says, I am not in a flood zone, but I don't have any room in my home without windows. Do you recommend evacuating?
Habitación en mi casa donde no haya ventanas. ¿Tienen alguna recomendación?
I do. I would.
Sí, yo la tengo.
In that case, I would definitely recommend evacuation because you can't hide from the wind.
En ese caso, yo recomendaría
Part of the envelope of your home is a window. So certainly better safe than sorry in that case.
Seguro que tomar el riesgo.
Thanks, Chief. If someone has an electric vehicle that is rendered undrivable after a storm, are there post-storm services that can help transport them to hospitals or other locations if they need it?
¿Pueden ayudar?
Absolutely. 911 system is going to be busy.
Se va a estar muy ocupado.
We will certainly be answering calls as soon as we are able to get back out on the road safely as the winds die down. As I mentioned before, there's a certain point where we are not safe to be on the road either, and we will be holding calls, but all those calls will be answered based on severity. And if you need to get to a hospital for whatever,
Dependiendo de la severidad.
we can get you there with an ambulance.
Y podemos llegar en ambulancia.
This goes back to generator safety. Is it safe to keep electrical generators on an elevated platform to avoid them being flooded?
Es conveniente tener los generadores en plataformas altas para que no se inunden.
It's situational, but I would think that it would be as long as it was outside. Yes.
Siempre y cuando estén afuera.
Yeah, you want to be using your generator until after the storm has left, and we wouldn't, usually the weather is better after that. So hopefully
El clima es mejor
not during the storm, but after.
de la tormenta, pero después.
If it's possible, would it be recommended to have battery-powered handheld radios to keep communication with neighbors? Is there an initiative or resource that could provide these, or would it need to be independent, community-driven initiatives?
I would say yes, and that's a great idea for
Diría que
homeowners
sí, es una gran
associations,
idea.
community emergency response teams in your local neighborhoods to have and communicate. That's a really great idea as
Asistencia
well too. That could help. When the
comunitaria.
chief is saying, we want you to stay in place and not be poking your head around, but you could communicate with your neighbors safely that way.
Que se puedan comunicar con sus vecinos.
And going back to the weather radio, the NOAA weather radio, does the EOC or 911 center have a designated AM or FM station that residents can tune to on the battery-powered radios?
So yes, there is the emergency broadcast stations, and there for us here, it's 6:20 a.m. and 9:70 a.m. And that's a statewide service as well too. That those they'll pick up our messaging, any county's messaging, and broadcast that through that emergency network. But for us, again, it's 6:20 and 9:70 a.m.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our panelists, and a special thank you to our interpreters for joining us today. We will be sending out the resource guide to everyone that registered for the webinar. If you have any questions, our contact information will be on the resource guide. In the meantime, you can visit the Pinellas County website, the Pinellas County Emergency Management website at disaster.pinellas.gov to access some of those resources. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much for joining us today, and stay safe.